Hello, producers. Happy New Week. This is another week of experience. Here again, we have another producer and director in our midst. His name is Oyelumade Teniola.
Omoteniola, the Omo is very important.
Oyelumade, thank you very much for being on our channel this week. We really appreciate it. I understand you are very busy, and I knew what it took me to get you to have this interview with us. I really appreciate it. Meet Omoteniola Oyelumade, the multi-talented storyteller behind scenes that matters. Omoteniola Oyelumade is a dynamic and results-driven storyteller whose work spans the intersections of filmmaking, content creation, and strategic storytelling. So let's just dive straight into the question so we don't even waste your time and our viewers' time as well. So our first question is, how were you able to transition from acting on Mnet's production to be a producer and a director of feature film, and especially of Mnet and Showmax production?
All right. Thank you very much. I'm really happy to be here. My first ever experience working on an Mnet project was on the Multi-Choice Talent Factory project called Lead on Showmax. I was the assistant director and also the production manager. Prior to that, I'd done short films and their series projects, but that was like my first bite into a proper project. And that gave me an idea on how to navigate, because naturally I'm an actor, and that just gave me an idea. Okay, I think that there is more to production than just acting. And it made me much more interested in what makes the engine really work. Because as actors, you just come to set, you act, you eat, you go to your room and you sleep. But I think I'm a very curious person and I always want more for myself. So I realized that, okay, I think there's something more to production. And venturing into it wasn't easy, because actors tend not to be taken seriously sometimes. And when you say you're a producer, what do you mean? Like, you're an actor now, so what do you mean you're a producer? It wasn't easy, but I think with the help of a lot of people, talking to people that done it before me was really helpful. I reached out to a lot of people, and they gave me ideas, they gave me things to look out for. I started pitching, and I got my first ever Mnet feature film, which was done in Ghana. So yeah, it's currently on Showmax. It's called Guess Who. So yeah, that's basically it in summary.
Okay, so thank you very much for that, Tenny. So our next question, how have you been able to manage funds for large scale production, especially someone that just started in the industry? Like, I know it takes a lot for production company or broadcasters to trust somebody that just entered into the industry to give you a lot of funds. How were you able to manage it and ensure that your production went on well without any financial issues back and forth, and you were able to deliver to broadcaster?
Thank you very much for that question. Let me say this. You mentioned something that's very, very important, and a lot of new or young producers, they neglect that point. Nobody is going to give you 20, 30 million naira or $1 million to do a project and you've not done anything. Nobody's trusting you with that amount of money. Nobody is doing that. That's one. So for me, I think I'd worked on a couple of projects, not as a producer. I think that was helpful. So I've done some Mnet project as a script supervisor, as a production manager. I worked on Aurora, yeah, I worked on Canada. So I've worked on a couple of projects. So when I reach out to you to say, oh, I have this project, it makes it much more easier for me to convince you rather than just, I'm a producer. What have you done? I've done one short premiere and you want me to give you 20 million naira. It's not possible. Nobody's trusting you with that amount of money. If you cannot, as we say in Nigeria, you have to show workings. You have to show workings. So I think that's very important. So managing funds for me, it's not necessarily my strength. So what I would do normally is to outsource. I get a line producer, an accountant that can handle that. That's one of the mistakes we make as young producer. There's a producer and there's a line producer. A line producer basically manages the day-to-day running of a project. While a producer, you're overseeing the whole thing. You probably hire someone. You're probably much more involved in the creative aspect of the project. But a line producer is basically interested in the budget, like 1,000 naira for costume. We better not exceed that. 2,000 naira for fuel. We better not exceed that. Now you need to get someone to manage that. And that person has to be on the line that's why it's called line producer. you are monitoring everything every day to make sure that we don't spend more than this. So for me, I outsource because the problem we have in Nollywood, as far as I'm concerned, is one person is trying to be a line producer, a production manager, and an accountant at the same time. And it's not possible. You need to outsource. If not, you run into basic, you run into debt.
So thank you for that. So another question I have for you is, as a producer of Guess Who, I understand that it was a big scale like production for you. It might not be for some people that have been in the industry for a long time, but for you that you're just coming in, it was something big for you. So how were you able to like secure funding? How were you able to convince like the team to give you funding and trusting you with that kind of money? What was the process like? And how were you able to like build your team? Because at the end of the day, if you don't work with a trusted team, then you've messed up your whole production, as far as I'm concerned. So how were you able to build the team and also secure funding?
Thank you. Not to stress too much on it. Guess whose journey started in 2022. 2022. I pitched in 2022 with my partner then, and we did not get funding until January 2024. Again, we pitched in 2022 and we did not get funding. So there was it was a long process. But I think because of my understanding of how the film business works, because I've seen a lot of project that takes time. I think it's in Nollywood that it's an issue. Development takes time for studio executives to get back. It takes time. It can take 10 years. It can take, depending on whatever scale the project is. So it was difficult, but I think I could understand. It was a long process, a lot of back and forth, conversations I had about the project. And yeah, eventually, thankfully, we got funding for the project. For team, teamwork. Because we shot in Ghana, personally, I wasn't able to go with a lot of people from here, but I still went with someone. Our producer and our producer was from Nigeria, and every other person that worked on the projects were Ghanaians as well. So it was an interesting production to work on, because I was in a different country entirely, and I was working with people from a different part of the country, and that was eye-opening, and we learned quite a lot working on that project.
Okay, so how were you able to handle casting for your actors?
Casting. So I'm not necessarily familiar with a lot of actors at that time, but right now, I have a lot of Ghanaian actors as friends now. I think again, I delegated, to my partner who was a Ghanaian. He is much more involved in the industry over there, and yeah, I think he basically handled that. As I always say, outsource things that you are good with. The story, the scripting, I worked on that, the schedule and every other. So if things that the other person is good at, the other person should handle it because we have to delegate duties to be very much efficient. So yeah, my partner handled the casting of the projects.
Okay, so how were you able to like manage financial constraint on a budget? Because I know for a fact that sometimes you might have submitted like a pitch document, a budget proposal to a broadcaster saying we need like 10 million naira,
Mhm.
or let me say like $5,000 or $50 million for your production. And this is something that you would have done like years ahead. Like you said, it takes a process, it takes a very long time sometimes for you to get green lead and giving the as in receiving the fund. And
Yeah.
inflation might have happened over time, things will be expensive now. So in situations like that, how were you guys able to like overcome it? And especially the fact that you had to travel from your comfort zone to a country that you are not even familiar with, pitching 2 years
Mhm.
prior to that.
What really helped us was that we were very cognizant of the story. So our story was very compact. It's a one location story, and it had four characters. So that was very important to us from the get-go. So production does not start on set. Production starts even from the story itself. You start planning the budget of your film as you are writing, as you are thinking, as you are ideating. So that was very important. I think that was one of the things that helped us. Yeah, we had we had a lot of revision of our budget from the first budget to the second budget. I remember having a conversation. We had a meeting with the commissioning editor, and she told us that, guys, I've read your script. Like the money, I don't even think the money I'm giving you guys is enough for the project. And we all laughed like, come on. Yeah. Again, it's understanding how to rework your story to fit into your budget because, as you rightly said, inflation happens, imagine 2022 to 2024, and now we are going together. It's cities, so it's a different ballgame entirely. So we have to rework a lot of things in our story. We have to, as I said, we have to kill a lot of our darlings. Basically, means there are so many things that might be precious to you in your story as a producer. Oh, I like this thing. Oh, I want this character. Sometimes you have to let it go and do what works for your budget sometimes, and also what works for your story. So yeah, I think it's not being too precious with certain things in our story, reworking it, and also making sure that the story does not suffer. Because there are times when you're trying to make sure a story fits into a budget, but in doing that, the story now suffers because we don't want to shoot that scene anymore. We don't want to. So we have to make a lot of changes. For example, we had a club scene in the story previously, but when we got on set and we started filming, we were like, we change to a house party. But so the beautiful thing is you don't see the script, you only see the film. So you have no prior knowledge of what it would have been. This is what we show you. So you had no idea that this scene was meant to be in a club. We turned it to a house party. And it was nice. So you need to make compromises a lot of times to make sure, because it's better you make those compromises rather than to enter basic debt. So yeah.
Thank you for emphasizing on this basic, because that basic, it like, I don't want to say it has sent a lot of people back to the village, like, and it has also sold, like, it has sold relationships back and forth, because not everybody that is investing in your movie actually understand how it unfolds at the end of the day, because all they just care about is, you see somebody in box office making this amount of money. How come this person is making this amount of money? Why am I not making this amount of money? But they don't even understand, like, this is what goes on at the end of the day. I say it most times that it's a 50-50 chance. However, I have been able to work at back end when it comes to analytics, when it comes to, like, okay, this movie, this is your story. What analysis have you done about it? Like, for you to know that, okay, this is the region, this is the demography, you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
This is what
Yeah.
you want to do at the end of the day. So I wanted to ask, before you go on set, when you have your story, when you have any, do you do any form of analysis, or sit down and say, okay, if I show it to this certain demography, we'll get a lot of viewers, we'll get a lot of followers, we'll get people talking about it. Is this something that people want to hear about? Is this something that people want to watch at the end of the day? So do you guys do any of that?
So now let me say this out of the gate. I say this to a lot of people that have conversations with me about filmmaking. One of the things I tell them that it is not I don't necessarily see it as a profession. I see it as a lifestyle, and sometimes it merges together. So personally, I'm an overthinker. I overthink a lot. I overthink a lot of things. So now when I get into production, I get into the nitty-gritty of it. I shot a project in February. It's a short film. It's not out yet. I'm with a colleague of mine. She was the writer and the director of the project, so I produced the project. And I got the script in October, November. And when I read the first draft, I told her, babe, nah, this is not it. We have to go back. Because that's one thing that I'm not just producing your script. So I've had a lot of people reach out to me. I want to produce this script. And I'll tell them, this is not going to work. Because I'm not interested in just producing anything. I want to do something that makes sense. So I'm not in a rush to just put something out. It has to make sense. And it's an Hausa story. Not to say more about it, but it's an Hausa story. And I told her, now we have to be careful of how we portray the story. And she said, oh, she wants it to be in English. And I told her, there's so many Hausa stories in English, but we have few Hausa stories that are actually in Hausa. Let's make it fully Hausa. But again, we have to be careful so that we don't alienate the audience, which means that we need to add in subtitle to it. And, we had a lot of conversations, a lot of back and forth, because one of the challenges that we have in the industry generally is that we're always in a hurry. Script is ready, let's go and shoot. Script is ready, let's go and shoot. We don't have enough conversations about the script. This part, will it work? Are people interested in this part? We should also inform casting, because on the project, we have to get some notable actors, because if you have a project that is good and I don't know anybody inside the industry I know of today, nobody's going to watch your movie. There are countless movies on YouTube that they are just there, nobody's watching it. So from the story, you have to pay attention to the story itself. What's the target audience? I'm not telling you that this movie is mostly for women. A lot of men are not going to see this short film. And that's the truth. And we're straight on that from the get-go. So this movie is for women. So when we are doing our testing, because I like doing testing, so we have a film, we need to send some people to give us feedback. We are going to be sending it to women, younger women, older women, to give us feedback. If you send it to a guy, most men will not get this story because the subject matter is not about them. You get what I'm saying? So I have this conversation with writers or directors when working on projects. So it's very important. Conversations are very, very important. I cannot over overestimate it how important conversations are for projects. You need to have conversations back and forth. This is important. This part. Who is the story for? How long is the story? You are doing a short film for 30 minutes. Who has time for that? Really, 30-minute short film. So yeah, conversations are very, very important. Take your time and small, small.
So you have been able to like pitch to like big broadcasters in West Africa. So what are the elements you emphasize to emerging filmmakers or existing filmmakers when it comes to funding and that made the big broadcasters excited when it comes to funding and broadcasting of your film? What exactly do you want to emphasize about it?
It's a very complicated um it's a very complicated conversation because there are different categories of people that fund films in Nollywood, for example. So you have independent people who they want to go into the film space. They are seeing the box office numbers and they're like, I want to make money too. So, guy, you're a filmmaker, but I'll give you 10 million naira. Want to put this film on YouTube, we'll make 15 million naira. And we have big corporations, we have the Mnet. I mean, Netflix used to commission films and Amazon. I don't know what that is at the moment. So it depends. Different strokes for different folks. It depends on what platform you're having conversations with. In my own experience, I think the scale of the project is really, really important. So, which means you are not having a story and everything is inside and a plane or a helicopter. You really need to you need to take cognizance of your story. Because the moment a studio executive or someone that wants to fund your film is looking at your film and realizes that, yo, this is how am I achieving this? How much am I spending on this? That's one. The second part would be that you have to your film, however original it is, or your story, you need to find a way for it to be how do I say this now? Something has to exist that looks a bit like it, and hopefully what you have is successful. Let me give you a short story. When we're pitching Guess Who, I remember mentioning one of the reference films, and one of the reference films was Akira Kurosawa's film. I was told that, oh, this is a nice film, but this film didn't make enough money. It occurred to me that using a reference film that was not commercially successful, however good the film is going to be a blowback to you because this independent person you're trying to pitch or a studio executive wants to make money. So if your look-alike film that you're trying to explain to them that, oh, this is a film, this is the kind of film I'm trying to make, oh, and that other film did not make money, why would this make money? You get what I'm saying? So it's very important that your story is something that exists somewhere, but not necessarily the same thing. It has to be original, but there has to be a semblance of it with something that exists. And again, it has to be a successful film, commercially successful film. And again, the scale of your project. Nobody's dropping thousands of millions of naira for you if you've not done anything. Trust me.
So as an emerging filmmaker, what are the steps? Because looking for funding can be very intimidating. I will not lie to you. So what steps would you advise an emerging filmmaker funding maybe a short film or a documentary based on your experience? What steps do you advise that they take?
You have to start somewhere. I started making short films in 2019. Well, a lot of it were my money, me, myself, my guys, and my team. You have to start small. You start somewhere. And asking for funding at a very young stage, I think it can be detrimental because again, you will enter gbese. I can assure you, I have a lot of people in my DMs now that have done project with people, and I can't overemphasize this. Start somewhere, have a community, have a team that you work with. Start making short films, 1 minute short film, 2 minute short films. You use that to secure to build a portfolio. So when you're asking for funding, you can show them what you've done. Now, if you are planning to now reach out to a big studio for funding, again, that means that you've had a plethora of projects that you've done in the past. Secondly, again, you need to come up with a story that will not cost as much because I have to if you've done a couple of projects and I'm looking at your story and I'm realizing that, oh, There's a lot of parties in your story. There are like 10 locations in your story. And this is your first time that you're trying to pitch. It's going to be problematic. Again, start somewhere, start small, build a portfolio. And when you're pitching, especially if it's your first time, to any network, whether it's Netflix, Amazon Prime, anyone, make sure your story, the scale of your story is not too large. It could be a location, it could be two locations, it could be fewer characters. And, I'm sure with that, you should have a good shot at getting it commissioned or being greenlit.
Yeah, so I also advise new filmmakers that okay, fine. Even if you cannot even get funding, you can speak to friends that are also in the industry where you can also like create like a barter agreement. Or if my film goes to the film festival, if we do this together on your next production, I can do that, which I know a lot of people do in the industry. There are even deferrals which you can even have on contract saying I am working, because some people do not actually keep to their words at the end of the day. But if you have it on like a contract and say, or on paper, saying, oh, you did XYZ, by the time my movie goes out there, if it sells, I can pay you for your services, or maybe when you're having your own production, I would come on set. So things like that. And that's where integrity comes in at the end of the day. Not everybody understands that film production is not a one-man show. It's like a community. And integrity also is also like it has to be the foundation, because if they notice that you don't have integrity in the industry, trust me, a lot of people will just sideline you.
Yeah.
They'll
Yeah.
sideline.
I think it is all, again, as I've said before, to reemphasize this point. In this year, I've had 3 different people reach out to me. Hello, Tenny, I have an idea. I want to do a story, and I think that you would be the best person to do this story. And I will have conversations with them, and they realize that I don't think it is what I thought, because I'm the kind of person that I tell you what it is. I'm not in a hurry to collect your money and shoot a project. I will tell you what it is. Oh, I don't think you make money. I think you make money. I explain everything to you. So yeah, so I'm not going into it with, don't worry, bring it. Oh, we can do it. Don't worry, don't worry. Uh, I don't even mind turning your money down if I realize that our goals are different. Because it's very important to have integrity, because that's the only way you can play a long game in this industry.
So, like I said, can you walk us through your strategy for producing a commercial like Good Time Creamer versus a feature film? What stays the same and what changes?
This is a very interesting question. Commercials are very impromptu. They are very impromptu. So what I mean is, you could be having a conversation with an agency. We want to do this commercial for this brand. Oh, okay, wait, you're talking, and you don't get funds, you don't get money, and you could get funds today, and they tell you that you have to shoot tomorrow. For a film project, as far as I know it, nobody's giving you money for a film today and expect you to shoot tomorrow. So there's a timeline to like plan a film, because you need to get costume, you need to get props, you need to get actors. So for commercials, they are very impromptu. So that means if you're a producer for a commercial, you need to have a very strong network. You need to have people that you can call on and say, you are shooting tomorrow, get this thing. Go this night, go to the market, go and get those props. You need to have a network of actors too. Yo, I'm shooting something, I need you, I'm casting you on this project. Because agency they don't care. Good Time Creamer, when we did it, they sent us money today and we shot the next day. And we didn't even get the full money. You get so, and you have to still shoot. So that also means that if you don't have a strong network and a strong team, you can't execute a good commercial. Because again, as I always tell people, no one cares about the wala or the stress that you went through. It's the results. So if you say because they paid you yesterday, I shot it, that's why the commercial is not good. That's not an excuse. So that's one very key difference between the two. Commercials are very, very, very impromptu. And if you don't have a strong system, a strong network, you can't pull it off. Because if they are calling you today and you have to shoot tomorrow, and you don't have people that you can call and say, yo, pull up for me. I mean, that was basically the experience of Good Time Creamer. We've been having conversations with them, but funding came very late. Imagine, I think maybe around in the afternoon, and we had to shoot the next day. And it was crazy. Get an apartment, get actors.
So another question I have for you is that when it comes to storytelling, how can you use storytelling to convince an investor or a brand to support your project?
Okay, so for an investor, let me answer for an investor. First, for an investor, you have to show them reference films. So films that are similar to your films that are successful. For example, you're doing an horror, maybe your story is about horror. You need to find similar horror films with similar themes in your stories that are successful. So you can show them, I mean, if this worked, if this earned this social amount of dollars in the box office, this story is similar to it, it should earn the same thing. So I think that's one trick. Sorry, what was the second one?
Investors and brands to support your projects.
So for brands, you have to align with the agenda. That's what I tell people. Every brand has an agenda. There are brands that are more into children. There are some brands that are more into women empowerment. There are some brands that are more into elegance. You know, if you are going to a brand like Gouda to sponsor your projects, you have to find similar themes. That has to do with maybe men sharing stuff together, going out. Probably there's a club scene in your story that you can plug in their products into. If you are trying to go to like a peak milk, you know, you are probably trying to think of mothers and children, Golden Morn, Maggie for women, you know. So the idea is to understand the brand that are going to so that you can understand what their branding is like. You align with their own agenda in your own story. So that way they can see similarities in your story.
Okay, so that's nice. So one question I have with you is when you are trying to like pitch to big broadcasters, I know a lot of people say, oh, send in your pitch document, you should have the log line, synopsis, you understand, storyboards. My storyboard, my pitch deck is set. But I realized that some of the pitch decks I have checked, when it comes to budgeting, some people get it wrong. And I tell people that I know you don't have like the at the end of the day, your broadcaster would cut down your budget and everything. But don't be too scared to go all out sometimes. Don't be too scared. When you go all out, they can now come back to you and say, oh, okay, this is it, this is it, this is that. So in situations like that, what would you advise emerging filmmakers?
I mean, I have a friend that did exactly what you just said. It was a Ghana Nigerian project and he pitched and I think his story got selected and he reached out to me as a producer and he sent me the budget. We're working. I was like, this thing is small. You can't do this. You know the person I'm talking about, but I'll not mention him. I was like, Charlie, this thing is small. You cannot send this thing to these guys because they will not even take you serious. Because you are saying a budget for a film and it's so small, and because you're scared, and as an experienced film producer that they are, they will see it and realize that this person has no idea of what they are doing. If your budget is small, because it means you don't know what you're doing. So again, go all out. We had to revamp the budget and went all out, and they accepted at the end of the day. Because again, don't be scared. Go all out. They'll cut it down. They're always going to cut it down. And at the end of the day, it shows that you know what you're doing. So there are some pitch documents that don't necessarily require budgeting. It's just a story sometimes. So yeah, again, get people that can do these things when it comes to budgeting. Sometimes you might be the story guy, but you might not be the budget guy.
Yeah.
There are two different skills.
There are two different skills, yes. So now we have come to the end of our chat with Omoteniola Oyelumade. Thank
Yeah.
you very much for coming on our channel. Thank you for talking through the business side of film, the processes you have been involved in. And wanted to ask that what's the next big thing for you? Can we apply to be on your set? Can we work on your set?
I have something I've been working on for a long time, and yeah, a lot of beautiful things are on the way, but good things take time. Patience.
Yes. When
Yes.
when it's properly cooked, I can send my resume.
I mean, why not? Why not? We need a an associate producer, you know, in another, you know, that can help us, you know.
Another
I mean,
location.
yeah, I wouldn't mind. I have a short film that's coming out very soon, so and it's about children and mostly the girl child. So I mean, we like more platform to showcase the film would be greatly appreciated.
Okay, all right, no problem. So, hi, producers. Thank you very much. You have heard Mr. Omoteniola Oyelumade. We'll be sharing his link in the description below. We would like you to also share, subscribe. You can also reach out to him on the social media page. He's very open to answer like as much questions as possible. That is how open he is, and that's why I was able to like bring him up on this show. I just reached out to him on Instagram, and although I chased him down, but at least he still He still answered us. Thank you very, very much. So, my fellow producers, see you guys next week with another experience. Have a great week. Enjoy your production this week. Have fun on set. I always say this to you, you can have fun on set. This it doesn't have to be stressful from start to finish. So enjoy
Mhm.
yourself. See you guys next week. Thank you very much, Danny. Thank you for the
Thank
opportunity
you.
and the interview. Bye,
Thank you.
guys. Bye.